Steve. So good evening, everybody. And this is an exciting evening. This is our first ATMOPAV webinar. And I mentioned to some people, this is somewhat of our soft opening to kind of see how this goes. So hopefully it'll go well. And if you have any questions or suggestions after the fact, or you have any speakers from the Philadelphia area you think would be good ideas, we'd love to hear them. So I knew I wanted to kick off our webinar series with something about Desmos, but I've done many trainings on the calculator and on Activity Builder. But what many people don't know is that within the last 3 or 4 months, Desmos has come out with maybe 12 to 14 new activities that run the gamut from 6th grade all the way up to perhaps 10th grade. And I'm going to show you where you can get these activities, and we're going to rehearse some of them and try some of them together and have some fun with things. So to start off, like Steve said, we want to do an icebreaker. If you haven't found the chat, it should be on the bottom of your screen. It should say a chat button, and hopefully that opens things up, I think, on the right-hand side. If you take a minute, introduce yourself, who you are, what school you're from. And then if in a classroom, I would do the fist of 5. Hold up one finger if you're an Activity Builder novice. Hold up all 5 fingers if you're a ninja. You can be a 2, 3, or 4. If you could give me your level there. And then if you've used Desmos activities before, what is your favorite Desmos activity? So I'm going to take about 90 seconds, and if you could answer those questions in the chat, and I'm going to open up my own little chat guy here for us to break the ice. I'll put this up here so people can see it. I totally agree, Jane. It's hard to pick your favorites sometimes. And it's fantastic we have some people that are totally new to this, and that is absolutely okay. So we have some people at 1s. We have Tom who's a -1. You know, I said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we certainly took license with that, didn't we? We have a negative number. We have 2.5s, 2s. That's fantastic. A nice mix of people from all over the area, and it's fantastic to see you all here tonight. So even if you're new to Activity Builders, oh, that was a hyphen. That's okay, Tom. Even if you're new to Activity Builder, hopefully the value you get out of today is what I would do as a first step as a teacher. You're going to experience these activities as learners and maybe get an idea of what their power might be. So what tonight is all about, tonight's goals, let me get rid of the chat here. And Steve, every now and then I'm going to prompt you. If you see something interesting in the chat, you can let me know, because I'm going to keep that thing off my screen for the most part. So tonight's goals, you're going to experience hopefully 3 new Desmos activities as learners, but I got my trusty phone here to see how much time that takes. We're going to recap and discuss the teacher moves. I am going to treat you like I would treat my classroom. I'm going to do different techniques of how we manage the activity. I'm going to show you where you can locate these great resources, but more than anything else, we are going to be math teachers doing math together virtually in our pajamas, and we're going to see how that goes. So for those of you who've never done an activity before, this is an exciting moment. This is the same thing I would do with a student. The way it works is you're going to type in, so you're going to have to open a browser, another browser. You will type in student.desmos.com. On that screen, it will ask you for an activity code. The activity code is not case sensitive, and you also don't have to put the space in. That's really just there as a site idea for students to make it easier to break up. It may also ask you to log in. If you have a Gmail account, it's a good idea to log in. The benefit there is that you can go back and revisit your activity, or if you continue without logging in, you can just put a name in. You can say your name is Dave tonight if you would like to be Dave. So started off like a student. I'm going to treat you the same way as my class. You have the code in the new browser. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to do what's on the screen, and you're set to go. Look in the chat to see if there's any pressing questions about what to do here. See how far I can make this little chat thing go. Maybe it works better on the bottom of the screen here. Now, if you are done with that first screen, just like my class, what you see on the screen now is called the teacher dashboard. As a teacher, I can see how my students are doing here. I see that I think we have 10 students logged in. I've only restricted you to the first screen. That's very intentional. In these activities, it's very rare that I just give kids the activity and say, go do the whole thing, because you'll have students all over different places on different screens. There are certain places where I want to have discussion and make sure we all have the same baseline understanding of what's going on. So hopefully you've had a chance to play around with that first screen where we have our turtles, and some people doing teacher practice. Oh, I love that. Yeah, if you want to open up another browser and try to break it, that's great too. But as a teacher, I noticed Bert has already answered here. I can click this button and see what Bert answered. Turtles raced, turtle 2-1. And I can cycle through all the students and see Diane didn't tell a story yet, so we're waiting on Diane, and that's okay. Francie said the pink got a head start, but the blue is going faster, so the blue won anyway. Fantastic. Red turtle in lane 1 gets a head start. Blue turtle in lane 2 is faster. So we're looking for interesting responses here. And this one is all about position and eventually rate of change. So we're looking for things along those lines. And notice we have all the people here who have given their thoughts so far. I do want to show you that I've actually given this activity to my classes before. This is what actual ninth graders said when I told them to tell a story. I'll give you a moment to read these. Some of these are wonderful. Also add, as we go along, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to use the chat as a back channel to discuss with each other things that are happening. I love the bottom right. Turtle 1 is on Red Bull. The other had a rough night. But really what I'm looking for is students to personalize the experience. This is going to be all about position and speed, and that's going to pay off later when we start looking at expressions and equations, which is what a lot of turtle time trials is about. So you'll notice right now on the teacher dashboard, I have pasted you just to screen 1, so we can have this idea that we're talking about slope, we're talking about position. But at this point, I'm going to release you to more screens. If you look on the top of your screen, you should have arrows there, and you can now arrow to screens 2, 3, 4, 5. Actually, you can go all the way to 6. So I'm going to give you about 3 minutes or so to explore on your own as a student, go through the activity, and have a good time with it. And as we go through, if you have questions in the chat, feel free to ask them. As you're working, I'll add, I did get a request here, or somebody asking, will this be recorded for viewing? This is being recorded, and we will come back. Eventually, ATMOPAV will start a YouTube channel, and we'll start housing these in our website, with the hope that you can go back and learn from what's going on. Actually, I guess you guys can all see that Jim asked. Maybe you guys are all looking. Well, that's not good. Oh, okay. Okay, class, I'm going to treat you just like my students and tell you that a pause is coming in about 30 seconds. You've never experienced pause before. It is the power of Activity Builder. All 10 seconds till pause. All right, there's our pause. The pause button. So if you can come back to my screen and see what's happening here, the button I pressed here is on the top left. This is the pause button. It does allow me to pause the activity, and on your screen you should see activity paused. Earlier I used the pacing button, which allows me to put you just on different screens, which I would like to control. This anonymize I'm going to talk about in a minute. I want to focus in on screen 6. Hopefully, what you experienced through screens 2, 3, 4. So screen 2 allowed you to play and put in the distances. And screen 3, you talked about the speeds, and it gave you some feedback on speed. Then we have a new turtle, and we played to watch the race. And now we're going to look at that same idea of the line segments that you can grab here. And now in screen 6, we're going to try to bring it all together. Which is faster, lane 3 turtle or lane 1 turtle? And notice I can look at the answers. The slope is steeper. Lane 3 is the faster. Lane 3 is steeper, steeper slope, higher slope. Line is steeper. Somebody went so far here as to actually figure out the speeds, steeper line. Will all the kids talk about steepness? Some of them will, and you'll want to leverage some of those amazing responses in front of the class. But let's say Bert here is somewhat nervous that I'm going to bring up his work in front of the class. This is what the anonymize button is for. You'll notice when I do that, all of your names changed from your names to famous mathematicians and scientists. And there's actually a wonderful database of mathematicians and scientists they use for these names. But now, so now when I'm bringing up this name, this is no longer, I think it was Bruce, it's now Gotthold Eisenstein, who is now giving us the answer. So that gives students a little bit more of a chance to be brave. So we're able to look at this. So screens 2 through 6, we looked at steepness and slope in a couple different ways. Here's what I love about this activity. I'm going to send you to screens 7 and 8 now. It's going to become a little bit more sophisticated, and there's going to be a little bit more fun in it, I think, as well. There's going to be some neat little aspects here. So I'm releasing you to 7 and 8. I'm going to unpause you. Go ahead and experience 7 and 8. There's some really cool stuff going on in there. Notice I can see where everyone is too. Most of you have now migrated to screen 7. I still have some people earlier screens, and that's totally okay. And if you have any questions for the group, feel free to ask them within the chat on the bottom of your screen. So notice in screen 7, we are moving on from looking at steepness as a table and via a line segment. And now we're coming up with our own expression or an equation for distance and time. And this will be a little bit more of a challenge for students. One suggestion I might have for you, this works great, is if you have 2 students on one device collaborating and submitting responses together, that works nicely. Tend to get more quality. And then 8 is just plain fun. We'll look at 8 and see what people do. 8 is a very nice learning experience, but also the chance to be a little silly. And I will tell you what I tell my students. We have a pause in about 30 seconds. See if we get through 7 and 8. Here comes the pause. All right, there is the pause. So let's recap. So again, I'm treating it like my students. Here's our screen 7, and let's take a look at some of the things that people said here. Here's Diana Davis. She gave us an equation of D equals 0.5T. So what will happen to that orange turtle as we do this? Well, let's take a look here. Oh, it's starting at the beginning, going at a fairly slow rate, and is going to come in last place. So there is Diana's equation that she came up with. But it's fun to look at some other people's equations. Here comes Goodholds again. He gave me a kind of cool equation here. 11.9 plus 0.2t. What's going to happen when we do Goodholds here? There it is. That little turtle's going really slow and just barely made it. But he started at 11.9. We gave him quite the head start. I'm looking for other interesting responses here. I'm going to actually go in on someone's here. I'm going to go in on David's. I didn't see anyone try this, and I've encouraged students to do this. What if I give you D equals, I got to think about this a little bit, 10t minus 30? In the chat, what do you think is going to happen here? 10t minus 30. What do you think is going to happen with the orange turtle here? Again, we don't want the awkward silence for too long. He will start way after everyone. Will he win? Let's see. So we'll give that about another 30 seconds. And then we'll press play on this one. Start way after everyone, but may he win? Off the screen. Oh, Al's already done the math. He's going to finish in 4.2 seconds. Does that make him the winner? I actually don't recall. He's going to win? All right, let's play. Here it is. Here comes all the turtles. My screen is going kind of quick. Well, here he comes. Oh, did he win? No, he came in second. Did not win. 3T1. And then usually the kids will play with that. And I know I wanted 3 activities tonight, and I'm already kind of rambling on this first one because it's so cool. But look at some of these neat things that people wrote here. Let's pick one here. Oh, wait a minute. This one looks cool. He owes. What's going to happen here? What is going to happen with our 4 turtles here? And we have them all over the screen. All over the place. And you guys are such adults because none of you did what kids will do. I'm going to take this one because it's missing one. They're missing a color. I'm going to take the orange color. I'm going to do what a kid would do. Whoop, whoop. And some kids will draw high and do all kinds of things. How do you think Desmos is going to react to my abstract artwork here? And because of time, give yourself about 10 seconds to think about it. What is Desmos going to do for an orange turtle? I don't know if I want to wait for chat. Let's see what we got here. Yep, wait 2 seconds. Let's play. Check this out. This is kind of cool. Here comes orange turtle. Orange turtle. Multiple orange turtles. Multiple orange turtles. Because we had failed a vertical line test, what a great time to talk about functions, and you had to draw things that are functions. So this one's kind of cool. All right. So we're going to end this activity at this point because I promised you 3 and we only got through 1. So I'm going to bring you back out to my slides again. So in the chat, for those of you who have used Desmos Activity Builder before, which of the tools do you find most helpful in your classroom, and why is it helpful? Or do you have any suggestions to our new people who are new to Activity Builder as to which of these is the most valuable? So take a moment in the chat and respond to the prompt there before we move on to our next screen. I'll move this out of the way so you can see it. And if you have any questions as well, Francie likes to pause. That's fantastic. Yes, definitely allows for good conversations. Steve likes to pause. Jane likes to pause. Yeah, I like the anonymize. So the pause button comes with great responsibility. It's totally okay to boo me when I use the pause button. Um, Anonymize is great. It's really cool. It gives kids the opportunity to be brave with their responses. They do not have to worry and I'm going to single out their answer up there. I rarely do an activity where I'm not using Anonymize. Yeah, safe. Perfect. Fantastic stuff. Yeah, Googling the mathematicians. I mean, if you're trying to work on multiculturalism in your classroom, students will Google the mathematicians, and some of them I don't know who they are. It's fantastic. The last count I knew, I think it was actually changed. It was something like 239 different mathematicians, but that may have changed recently. Yeah, students will do that. They'll announce who they are. They're not shy. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I promised 3 activities today, and it's already 7:27. So we're going to speed along with our next activity. So that was Turtle Time Trials. I'll show you where you can get it and access it at the end of this. Here comes our next one. We're going to do one called Balance the Scale. So again, you might want to open up a new browser tab, student.desmos.com. I will also very quickly, if I can find it, I have the link to this one. I will post it here in the chat if I did it right. Yeah. If you also want to click that, oops, to everyone. Um, if you want to click that link, you can also do that. I just put it in the chat. So new one, balance the scale. And for this one, you are restricted to screens 1, 2, and 3 to start. So let's give you 2 or 3 minutes to work through those. I do notice we have some new people who have joined us. This is the second of our 3 activity builders we're going to take a look at. This one's called Balance the Scale. Say about 2 more minutes before pause. If you have any comments or questions about this activity or the last activity, feel free to use the chat. Pause in 30 seconds. So here comes your pause. So I have to say, the first time I saw this activity, I thought, oh, how cool is this? It's so satisfying. See all the gumballs or whatever the heck it is go into the little pan and watch that little needle and know that you got it right. This one, I'm a big fan of this activity. And it's a neat use of scientific notation. But notice I can go on teacher here. If you look at the screen that I have in the broadcast here, I can go to the teacher screen and I can look to see what different people said here. Describe a strategy. So a lot of kids are going to guess and check here. I see change one number till the arrow gets to the green middle. Well, yeah, that's what we did, right? We're going to change the number till it gets there. We could just divide them somehow. We could divide 5.3 divided by 1.1, and we found a difference in the powers of 10. Eventually, we do want to get to that level of sophistication. Try numbers one by one until it almost works. And that's totally cool. If that's what you did, that's a great strategy. So notice as we do these, what we're looking for is interesting responses that we can verify with other students. So like this cool one, wait a minute, you can just divide the decimals and then just take these exponents here and somehow do something with them? Is that reasonable? And now you can ask students to verify that and think about whether that's a reasonable strategy. Because, yeah, we're going to guess and check it first, but eventually we want to have a more formal strategy of what's going on here. So I invite you to rehearse and leverage the different student responses and think about how would you get conversation from students and agreement out of the different responses that you see here. Did a nice job. For this one, again, the time is going to run short at some point if I let you go through the whole activity. I think the rest of this activity is pretty neat, especially screen 6. So I'm just going to turn the pacing off completely and the pausing. You're welcome to bounce through the whole activity at this point. 4 and 5 just ask you to weigh a couple more things, but then 6 is really cool. And if you're someone who just likes to spoil Christmas, feel free to go right to screen 6 and toy around with the different things going on there. Notice how everyone went right to screen 6. We all ran there. Francie, you should just be able to use Shift 8 as your multiply sign. What are you trying to use? You're forgiven. Francie's pregnant and she's naming the baby Desmos. It's official. Just about another minute or so on this activity, and we're going to move on to our last one. But notice on my screen, when I'm looking at the teacher screen, because this one has choice to it, you're able to choose your objects. Depending on what you've chosen here, I have this little completed sign that tells me you've done it correctly, and we're able to balance things. I have these little check marks, so I can see that you've done it correctly, really successfully for the one you chose. I love the choices. And pause coming in about 45 seconds. Oh, someone got to be Katherine Johnson today. That's lovely. Who got to be Katherine Johnson? You are so lucky. Carlotta did. All right, there's that pause. And I apologize if I interrupted your math fun, which is, by the way, a wonderful moment in class when students will boo you and act annoyed because you stop them from doing mathematics. And it's a very perverse, wonderful thing that students are complaining that you did that to them. But use that pause button judiciously. You just need to be able to get the class back and let the students do their work. So if you come back to the screen, the actual presentation, let me get rid of the chat here, although it's going to come back. I do want to ask a follow-up here. If you're new to Activity Builder, you've now seen 2 activities. Maybe you've done more with your classes. What do you notice in the structure of these activities or any activities you've done before? And how might you approach using these activities in your classroom? Or if you have any uh, war stories to share with people, feel free to tell us in the chat. If you're new and you wandered in kind of halfway through, feel free to introduce yourself as well. I know we have some new people, but take a moment and tell me about what you notice in the structure here. How are these things structured? Very true, Christine. Hi, Christine, by the way. Christine's a colleague and a wonderful person you should all know. Yes, learning from mistakes is awesome. Francie, I agree with. There's always good scaffolding. And these first 2 activities, the first screen or 2, were about tapping into students' background information, their background knowledge. And then eventually we build and build. And then towards the end, I agree with Marianne, we have some ideas where students can be creative and perhaps a little silly with what they do. And that's okay. Yes, Jane. It's the one with the scientific notation is a wonderful way to talk about estimating. Yeah, just great stuff here. Okay, I promised 3 activities, and I'm looking at the clock, and it's 7:43. So I'm going to try to do this last activity about 5 minutes. Your last activity. Oh, let's look at this one. Video and weighing apps with traditional Desmos tools makes them more interactive. Yeah, I'm gonna. I don't know who L. Kenny is. What your first name? I'm sorry, so I'm just going to call you L. Kenny. Trying to build your own activities is really difficult and can be a little cumbersome if you really don't try to storyboard or um, it can be very time consuming. Let's just leave it that way. I would always try to use the Desmos activities first and then dip your toes into the water and try to make a 1 or 2 screen activity, which perhaps will be a day for another webinar for another day. So one last activity. I wanted to get something that ran the gamut of all types of mathematics. We haven't done any geometry yet. This one is called sketchy dilations. So there is your code. Let me post in the chat as well. I think I have it there. Yeah, there it is. It's also posted in the chat if you'd like to click it from there. One last activity for tonight. Bring that code back. And again, because of time, I'm going to restrict the amount of time that we have on this one. If you can kind of go back and look at my screen again, I guess I have to pause to do that, or else everyone's going to keep playing. I like Miss Reader here was making letters with some of hers, some of her machines. Some people making dots with their things. But another thing I want to point out here on my screen, if you look on the bottom, you do have teacher moves and sample responses. So if you are new to Activity Builder, sometimes it's nice to go through these. If I click sample responses, it tells me what the 4 machines do. I know one of them does a 1.5 times as big. One of them does a half size. One of them does twice as large. One rotates a little bit. So you don't always have to work through these on your own. You can kind of have the responses here. And it gives you teachers moves here and where you should pace and pause, where it suggests you pace and pause. Just because of time, I'm going to totally unpace you on this one. You're free to wander and explore the space, but we're going to come back again and recap the evening in about 2-3 minutes and then show you where you can get all these great things from. Feel free to bounce around the different screens. And I realize I've not given you nearly enough time to explore this activity, and I see people are all over the place here. Let's cut 30 seconds so we can recap and finish up the night and take any questions. Notice what eventually happens in this activity. We talk about dilations, forming um, what we similar figures is what I'm trying to say here. All about similar figures. All right, here comes your pause, folks. Here comes your pause. So I will unpause you at the end of this presentation. So if you didn't get to see some screens, you can always go back on your browser there too. But if you go back to my presentation, just a few final thoughts here. Where do you get these things? Where do you get these activities? So many of you do know that teacher.desmos.com is the place to go. This is where teachers get activities. On the top right, you'll have to sign in. I use a Google account because it links very nicely. On the side here are the featured collections. These are not all the activities, but they have bundled some things together here. And one of the new ones they put there is they have put something there for recently released activities. And that's where you will find a collection of, I believe it's 12 to 14 activities that are the most recently done. So these are not the only three. There's a couple other ones there as well that you might want to play with. I know there's a couple there about intersecting lines, parallel and perpendiculars. There's all kinds of different things that are new there, and really creative stuff too. So for people who are new with getting started with this, I do have a couple pro tips for getting started with Desmos Activity Builder. My first thing is I would use the student preview. If you would explore an activity, you'll see a blue button that says student preview that allows you to experience the activity just like a student would. Go through that and treat it like a student. Don't treat it like a teacher that gets everything right and knows all the answers. Think about the interesting ways that students might get it right or wrong, or where you might be able to leverage conversation. Um, Also, print the teacher guide. When you go to an activity on the top right, you will see a place where you can print or save the teacher guide. It will give you tips and tricks and the suggested teacher moves. Also, a great thing to do is in a department meeting or in a prep time, because everyone has a lot of time during their prep, I'm sure. But when you find time, find a group of teacher friends and rehearse the toolkit. Have three people sit in a circle. One of you generates the code, and the other two are students. And you really have to get used to using that teacher conversation toolkit uh, to get the idea of how this is going to work in class. And plan and think in small steps, small little steps. Maybe you do a small activity first. Maybe you only do 3 screens one day. Take your time with it. It is okay to mess up a little bit. It'll take some time to get used to the flow and how you manage the conversation, while at the same time managing your device. Okay. And finally, the YouTube channel for Desmos, if you go there, youtube.com, Desmos Inc., they've done a few webinars within the last few months. And one of them was getting started with Activity Builder, which is by Stephanie Blair, who is one of the Desmos teaching fellows. She's fantastic, and she ran through the different steps just like I did with different activities. So feel free to use those. But that's about it for tonight. If you want to come back in the chat and you can share with us one thing you took away from tonight's webinar, or what's the next step you want to try, or if you have another question or a comment or anything you'd like to talk about, or a great recipe you'd like to share, feel free to leave that. If not, thank you, Mary. I had a great time. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And I hope everyone has a nice night. This will be recorded and we'll have it out on an ATMOPAV YouTube channel. And Steve, at this point, I'm going to hand this back to you.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Bob. That was some great information and some great stuff there. One thing, I'm going to be posting this webinar to YouTube. So anyone that came in midway through, I was kind of looking around. We had some people come in late. If you would like to go back and hear what Bob had to say about some of the earlier activities, again, he did 3 different activities here. Be sure to check out that recording on YouTube. What we will do is send that out in our next ATMOPAV e-blast. And we will be actually, the long-term plan here is we will actually have a YouTube channel where we will start housing these different webinars as we begin to have them. And speaking of which, keep an eye to your e-news, because we will be having another webinar in the coming months, and we'll have more details to follow. Any final questions for Bob, please leave in the chat. Other than that, that'll conclude the webinar for tonight. Thank you all for coming to our first one ever. We hope this is our first of many webinars that we'll have over the course of the next months and years in ATMOPAV. Thanks, everyone.